I have been in situations before where I've absolutely freaking killed the interview, nailed it. Awesome. This job is mine. And then bam, out of nowhere comes this question. And I'm just like, what? What? Where did this come from? So this video is going to talk about 5 of those really tough interview questions. And we're just going to do it right here in the security of our own little world, right? So there's no judgment, there's no sweaty sweats. Don't get your heart rate up. We're just going to chitty chat. I'm going to go over these questions and I'm going to tell you what interviewers are looking for and how to answer them. When you answer these, you should be utilizing the STAR methodology. And if you don't know what that is, Google it, download the handout that is in this description of this video, or, and best, go watch the other video where I talk about it. It's got a handout too. It's awesome. It's a great video. Just check it out. My name is Sheila Hammond, and with over 25 years in the professional world doing these kinds of interviews and such, I have some thoughts and insights. I didn't know what else to say to that, honestly. All right, it's time to get started. Let's take a look at question 1. Imagine you're midway through a project and user testing reveals a crucial, critical usability issue. The deadline is looming and the development team is hesitant to make significant changes. How would you navigate the situation? So, what they're looking for is they want to see that you have prioritization skills. They want to see that you can problem solve under pressure, and they want to see how you manage your stakeholders. So, the first thing that you'd probably want to start off doing when answering this question is to talk about, did this happen in the middle, the beginning, the end of the project? Because that does matter how you handled it and what the whole context of the situation was. Then talk about how you figured out how critical this situation really was. Critical to a developer is not the same as critical to marketing, is not the same as critical to sales, right? So you need to not knee jerk your reaction. Tell them that you did not knee jerk your reaction and that you actually did some research to define and figure out whether or not this indeed was a critical issue. If you talk about the research that you did and how you did it, they'll know that you're actually basing your decisions on data, right? That you're doing a data-driven decision-making model and that you're not just like, my gut says that I should do this, or I really feel like I should do this, right? Use data. The interviewers also want to see how you collaborate, right? So talk about how you collaborated with stakeholders. Talk about how you collaborated with dev. Talk about how you collaborated with your design resources. You're not just a solo act here, and the interviewer doesn't want to see that from you. They want to see that you can collaborate. Then they're going to want to know how you presented your findings and advocated for a fix. Did you just say, this is the way we're doing it and that's the way it is because I said so? Or did you actually get buy-in from your stakeholders? Also, and I think it's pretty important to acknowledge the dev team in this and say that, you know what, I talked to dev. I understood that it was going to add more complexity to the project. I understood that it was going to push out our time frame. Let them know that you actually heard that concern. And then talk about how you prioritize things. Did you take something out of the project to put this in? Did you just extend the deadline out? They want to know what you did in order to accommodate this situation. The key to this question is showing that you found a solution that addresses user needs and project success, and you did it all under pressure. Gracefully, I hope. All right, let's move on to question number 2. Describe the concept of scope creep and explain how you prevent it from happening. Interviewers want to know that you understand what scope creep is and that you work on mitigating its effects. They want to know what your strategies are to prevent scope creep from happening in the first place. This answer to this question is going to demonstrate your ability to plan, manage expectations, and proactively address potential concerns. So again, with most of these questions, you're going to start off just by describing the situation, right? Just to briefly describe what your project was. Then you need to talk about how the creep happened. How did the scope creep manifest? How did it rear its ugly head? There are so many ways this can happen. Maybe the requirements were unclear. Maybe stakeholders were throwing in things at the last minute. Sometimes the scope creep can actually happen during development because dev is working maybe on legacy code and they're like, oh, gosh, I didn't know that it was going to be this complicated. Or maybe when they see the database, they're like, oh, I didn't know the database had all this extra bells and whistles stuff and I'm having trouble doing this and that and the next. So there's a lot of ways that this scope creep can happen. So share how that happened in your situation. Also, in answering this question, you might want to consider telling them how you have a very clearly defined and very detailed scope document. And maybe this document has even been signed off by stakeholders, and that you keep this document out on a shared drive somewhere so that everybody can refer to it. If you don't do this. Having this clearly defined scope document is really important. It will become your North Star, right? So I'm just saying, do it. Acknowledge that you understand that scope creep happens. I usually make some kind of joke, like scope creep. Am I right? Woo! But you do you. You do you. Whatever makes sense to you. Talk about how you understand that it happens, but you do your best to always manage it. And ways that you manage it might be attending daily stand-ups, or maybe you have regular check-ins with your stakeholders. Talk to them about the things that you do to mitigate scope creep. You might also mention that you have mastered the art of saying no, which is another one of my videos, and that you feel empowered to say no to people if the feature that they are requesting does not meet the goals and objectives of that release. The point is for this question is that interviewers want to see that you know how to define scope clearly, that you know how to manage expectations, and that you communicate clearly and often with your stakeholders and your partners. Let's move on to the next question. How do you explain highly technical information to stakeholders and decision makers? I swear, I know this sounds really snotty, but whenever I get this question, I just want to be like, "Ugh," because I just do, okay? I just do. Ugh. Your interviewers are looking for your communication skills and that you have the ability to simplify complex information, and that you have audience awareness, that you know who you're talking to. So talk about how you change your communication based upon your audience. You're going to talk differently to a group of salespeople that you will to a group of executives, that you will to a group of developers. Describe what strategies you use that helps get the information across. Maybe you use metaphors, analogies, charts, graphs, any kind of visual. Talk about what you do to get people to understand what you're talking about. Talk about the things that you did while you were presenting to make sure that everybody did understand and there are no misunderstandings. Encouraging questions, talking to people afterwards, giving out your email address to make sure that people know that they can come to you if they have any questions. Remember, the key to this question is to show your ability to take that complex information and simplify it so that everybody can understand it. Talk about how you did that. Now, if you've ever had to deal with this next question, you know why it's on the list. Conflict is inevitable in any project. Tell me about a time you had to mediate a disagreement between stakeholders with opposing viewpoints. How did you resolve the situation? Uh, with my boxing skills? Oh my gosh, I have been in situations with stakeholders that these guys were about to throw down because they get so upset. They need this feature so bad. Throw down. Whew. Need to get hazard pay. So, obviously, the interview questions, the interviewers are looking for your conflict resolution, conflict management skills. They want to make sure that you've got active listening chops, and they want to make sure that you know how to find common ground. So, I'm going to answer this a little bit differently. Now, of course, with all of these questions, you want to look back into your professional history and talk about a time when this actually happened to you. But what if this has never happened to you? What if you've never had to mediate a disagreement between stakeholders? What do you do? Well, you tell the interviewer that I've never had to do this in my professional career. However, if I did have to do this, this is what I would do. And then just answer it hypothetically. Easy peasy. So, when you start answering this question, you of course want to give a brief overview of the nature of the disagreement. Don't get into details like, oh my God, it was between Joni and Bob is such a pain in the ass, and everybody hates him, and he's always causing trouble. So, I was already on Joni's side when this started, right? Uh, Don't do that. Don't do that. Try to remain objective and just talk about what the disagreement was. Period. Simple. Now, explained how you actively listened to both sides of the conversation and that you had the ability to kind of find the commonalities that they were talking about. Maybe they were so angry they didn't see that what they were actually saying was the same thing. And so you were able to point that out. That happens an awful lot. Make sure that you tell the interviewer that you did not take sides, that you remained objective and you used your listening to find that common ground. Just talk about how you calmed everybody down, I guess is really what it comes down to. How did you de-escalate the situation? What was your solution? Remember, the key to this is to show that you can manage conflict constructively. You want to focus on active listening, identifying common ground, and finding solutions that work for everyone involved. This is another one of those questions, this one coming up next, that I just want to be like, I just do. Okay. Gall. I mean, really, do you know who I am? Seriously. All right. This brings us to our last question. How do you prioritize your backlog and keep it groomed? First of all, they want to know that you can prioritize. Fine, great, terrific. But they want to know what your system is of prioritizing tasks and how you do that on a daily basis. They want to see that you can weigh factors like value, effort, and urgency to make informed decisions. And they also want to know how you communicate to your stakeholders. So, if you are grooming that backlog and you're moving things around and changing this to this priority and changing that to that priority, you got to communicate that out, right? They want to know how you do that. So, with the prioritization of the backlog, value, effort, and urgency, those are the three things that you want to make sure you address with this question. And then when you are talking about why the prioritization changed, how do you do that? Do you set up a meeting? Do you have a SharePoint site or a Confluence site? Or how do you communicate that out? You can't just make changes and then just do it in a silo and not communicate that. So the person that's interviewing you wants to know that you aren't just willy-nilly making decisions and you're not involving anyone else and that you're just like a one-man show. The key is to showcase your ability to prioritize tasks strategically. Focus on the factors you consider, how you weigh them, and how you communicate your prioritization decisions. Now, because I'm me and I love you, I have some bonus tips that you might want to consider with these tough interview questions. I mentioned this earlier in this video to try to utilize skills that are mentioned in the job description. So I have a crappy memory, super crappy. So sticky notes, sticky notes, sticky notes. I put them all over the place. So that way, when I'm answering these questions, I can make sure that I'm using some of the buzzwords that were in the job description. Tip number 2. Don't be afraid to tell stories, but watch your babble. It's always nice to tell a little bit about yourself to the interviewer because then it kind of makes you seem a little bit more human, trying to find that common ground with them. Also, it just gives them an insight into your personality and whether or not that you'd be a culture fit. But again, just watch the babble. I mean, don't go off into a story. If you start seeing the people that you're interviewing with, looking up at the sky, checking their watch, right? You've lost them. You've lost them. Reel it in, baby. Reel it in. And then the third tip with this is don't just talk about the events that happened. Talk about the impact that you made during these events. How did your actions contribute to the overall success? Throughout the interview, I don't care if you are in person or if you are virtual, you need to practice your active listening. Repeat things, smile and nod, keep eye contact. And lordy be, do not interrupt the interviewer. Oh, I don't even want to, let's just not even go there. Just don't interrupt the interviewer until they're done. Now, something that people don't often do is ask clarifying questions. If they talk about something that you don't know what it is or you're unclear on, ask about it. Sometimes during interviews, people start utilizing their technical jargon that they use on a daily basis that doesn't necessarily translate to someone who doesn't work there. So ask the question. They'll know that you were listening. Bonus, bonus. Now, if you're like me, you can't necessarily think on the spot, right? So if you need to take a tick, do that. Take a moment to answer the question. Now, if you feel that maybe you're taking too long of a moment, say something. Just be like, that is a great question. Let me just think about that for a second because I'd really like to give you a good answer. And then answer, right? So you don't feel like you have to hurry, rush to answer the question. It's not a race. It's not a race. First impressions matter. Bold, period. Underline, exclamation point. Make eye contact. Don't play on your phone. Don't play something over here on your computer, right? Make eye contact. Dress appropriately, right? If you're virtual, at least dress from the waist up appropriately, okay? It matters. Keep a positive attitude. Don't start off with, oh God, my life is just horrible right now. It just sucks so bad. I don't even want to do this interview. I don't even know why I'm here. right? Maintain a positive demeanor. Watch the fidgeting. Don't cross your arms. Don't make nervous gestures or keep them to a minimum if you do. Just maintain that open and relaxed body posture as best you can. I just want to mention one more thing about the phone. Don't mess with your phone and return text messages when you're on an interview, obviously, and turn off your ringer. Now, I say obviously because I would think that any normal, reasonable person would know not to do that. But I have conducted several interviews where people were answering text messages and they would tell me, they'd be like, oh, it's my girlfriend. I got to tell her what I want for dinner. Oh, okay. Well, maybe you should just call her because we are done here, sir. We are done. So remember with this, you're not just answering questions, you're kind of telling your professional story in such a way, right? You're showcasing why you are the perfect candidate for this job. That is the goal of all of these questions. That is all I have for today. Good luck to you on your next interview. I would love to hear all about it in the comments. Lazy BA out.